Your brain just lied to you 3 times in the last 60 seconds. And the scary part? You have no idea when it happened. Right now, as you're watching this video, your mind is playing tricks on you that are sabotaging your relationships, your career, and your happiness. But here's the thing. Once you see these mental traps, you can never unsee them. I'm about to show you the 7 cognitive biases that are secretly running your life. These aren't just abstract psychology concepts. They're the invisible puppet strings controlling your decisions, your emotions, and your future. And if you stick with me until the end, I'll reveal the one bias that's probably costing you thousands of dollars right now without you even knowing it. Trust me, number 4 is going to blow your mind. Think about your last big mistake. The relationship that didn't work out. The investment that went south. The opportunity you missed. Chances are, you blamed bad luck, other people, or circumstances beyond your control. But what if I told you that your own brain, the very thing you trust most, was the real culprit? Every day we make thousands of decisions. From what to eat for breakfast to who to marry, from which stocks to buy to which career path to follow. And every single one of these decisions is filtered through a cognitive biases, mental shortcuts that often lead us astray. The cost? Broken relationships, failed businesses, wasted years, missed opportunities. And the worst part? We don't even see it happening. Let me start with a question. What's more dangerous, flying in a plane or driving a car? If you said flying, your brain just got hijacked by the availability heuristic. This is when we judge the likelihood of something happening based on how easily we can remember examples of it. Plane crashes make international news. Car accidents barely make local news. So our brains think plane crashes are more common, even though you're literally 2,000 times more likely to die in a car than a plane. This bias doesn't just affect big decisions, it's sabotaging your daily life. You avoid the gym because you remember that one time you got injured. You don't start that business because you recall every failure story you've heard. You stay in your comfort zone because the risks feel magnified in your memory. Here's a quote that'll stick with you. The availability heuristic doesn't ask if something is likely, it asks if it's memorable. And memorable isn't always accurate. Ever notice how the most confident person in the room is often the least qualified? Welcome to the Dunning-Kruger effect. This is the cognitive bias where people with low skill or knowledge in a particular area overestimate their own competence. Basically, the less you know, the more confident you feel. I once knew a guy who watched 3 YouTube videos about investing and then put his entire life savings into cryptocurrency. He was absolutely convinced he was the next Warren Buffett. Spoiler alert, he wasn't. But here's the twist. We're all guilty of this. That time you gave relationship advice after reading one self-help book? Dunning-Kruger. When you diagnosed yourself with a rare disease after Googling symptoms. Dunning-Kruger. When you thought you could skip the tutorial and figure out the software yourself. Classic Dunning-Kruger. The scariest part? The more incompetent someone is, the less likely they are to recognize their incompetence. It's like being blind to your own blindness. As Charles Darwin once said, ignorance more frequently begets confidence than does knowledge. Right now, I want you to think of the last 2 digits of your phone number. Got it? Now, would you pay that amount in dollars for a decent bottle of wine? If your number ends in 23, $23 probably sounds reasonable. If it ends in 87, $87 seems outrageous. That's anchoring bias in action. The first piece of information you receive heavily influences all subsequent judgments. Marketers use this against you every single day. Ever wonder why there's always an overpriced item at the top of the menu? It's not there to be sold, it's there to make everything else look reasonable by comparison. Real estate agents show you overpriced houses first to make the actual house seem like a bargain. Car salesmen start with the premium package to make the standard option feel economical. But anchoring bias goes deeper than just pricing. In job interviews, the first candidate sets the anchor for everyone else. In negotiations, whoever throws out the first number has massive psychological advantage. Here's the kicker. Even when we know about anchoring bias, we still fall for it. It's that powerful. Okay, this is the big one I promised you earlier. The planning fallacy is why you're always running late, why projects go over budget, and why that quick task turns into an all-day ordeal. We consistently underestimate how long things will take, how much they'll cost, and how complex they'll be, even when we have past experience telling us otherwise. The Sydney Opera House was supposed to take 4 years and cost $7 million. It took 14 years and cost $102 million. The Berlin Brandenburg Airport? Planned for 2011, opened in 2020. 9 years late. But this isn't just about massive construction projects. This is about your life. That business you said you'd launch in 3 months? Still working on it a year later? That room you were going to redecorate in a weekend? Half painted 2 months later? The planning fallacy is costing you money, time, and credibility. And here's why it happens. When we plan, we imagine the best-case scenario. We forget about traffic, we forget about complications, we forget that life has a habit of getting in the way. Daniel Kahneman, who won the Nobel Prize for his work on cognitive biases, said, "The planning fallacy is a consequence of the tendency to neglect distributional information and to focus on the singular case." In simple terms, we think this time will be different. It rarely is. Here's a scenario. You're driving and someone cuts you off. What's your first thought? What an idiot! Or they're probably late for something important. If you're like most people, you probably thought they were an idiot. But what if you cut someone off? You'd probably think, "Sorry, I'm just running late." Or, "I didn't see them." This is attribution bias. We judge others by their actions, but we judge ourselves by our intentions. When your friend cancels plans, they're flaky. When you cancel plans, you have a legitimate reason. When your coworker gets promoted, they got lucky. When you get promoted, you earned it through hard work. This bias is relationship poison. It's why couples fight over who's more considerate. It's why teams fall apart. It's why we hold grudges and assume the worst in others. But here's what's really wild. This bias works in reverse too. When we succeed, we attribute it to our skills. When we fail, we blame external circumstances. This keeps us from learning from our mistakes and improving. The solution? Start asking yourself, if someone else did exactly what I just did, how would I judge them? It's uncomfortable, but it's honest. Every successful entrepreneur has a story about dropping out of college. Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, all college dropouts who built billion-dollar empires. So dropping out must be the secret to success, right? Wrong. That's survivorship bias talking. Survivorship bias is when we focus on successful examples while ignoring failures. We see the college dropouts who became billionaires, but we don't see the millions of college dropouts who are struggling to find work. This bias is everywhere. We read about the day trader who made millions, but not the thousands who lost their savings. We hear about the actress who got discovered at a coffee shop, but not the thousands still serving coffee waiting for their break. Social media makes this worse. Everyone posts their wins, nobody posts their losses. Your Instagram feed is basically survivorship bias in visual form. This isn't just harmless inspiration, it's dangerous. It makes us think success is easier than it is, that the odds are better than they are. It leads to terrible decisions based on incomplete information. Abraham Lincoln said, "You can fool all the people some of the time, and some of the people all the time, but you cannot fool all the people all the time." Survivorship bias fools us by only showing us the people who didn't get fooled. Quick question: would you rather find $50 on the ground or avoid losing 50s from your wallet? Most people say they'd rather avoid the loss. That's loss aversion. We feel the pain of losing something twice as strongly as we feel the pleasure of gaining something equivalent. This bias is keeping you stuck. It's why you stay in jobs you hate. The fear of losing steady income outweighs the potential gain of finding something better. It's why you keep stocks that are losing money. Selling would make the loss real. It's why you don't end toxic relationships. Losing what you have feels worse than potentially finding something better. Loss aversion is why gyms make money on unused memberships. You don't want to lose your membership, even if you haven't been in months. It's why subscription services make canceling so difficult. They know you'll avoid the loss of canceling. But here's the cruel irony. By trying to avoid small losses, we often guarantee bigger ones. We miss opportunities. We stay in situations that drain us. We play it safe until safe becomes dangerous. Warren Buffett understood this. Risk comes from not knowing what you're doing. The biggest risk isn't losing what you have. It's never discovering what you could have. Here's the truth that changes everything. Your brain isn't broken. These biases exist because they helped our ancestors survive. The availability heuristic helped them remember dangers. Loss aversion kept them from taking unnecessary risks when resources were scarce. But we're not living in caves anymore. The mental shortcuts that kept our ancestors alive are now keeping us small, scared, and stuck. The moment you recognize these biases in action, you reclaim control. You stop being the victim of your own mind and start being the architect of your destiny. So let me leave you with this challenge. For the next week, catch yourself in these biases. When you make a decision, ask yourself, which bias might be influencing me right now? When you avoid trying something new, is it the availability heuristic making you remember every failure story? When you judge someone harshly, is it attribution bias? When you procrastinate on that big project, is it the planning fallacy making it seem more overwhelming than actually is? Awareness is the first step to freedom. You can't change what you can't see, but once you see these patterns, you can't unsee them. Remember, your brain is incredibly powerful, but it's not infallible. These biases aren't character flaws, they're human nature. The difference between people who succeed and people who stay stuck isn't that successful people don't have biases. It's that they recognize them and account for them. As Maya Angelou said, "When we know better, we do better. Now you know better." If this video opened your eyes to how your own mind might be working against you, smash that like button. It helps more people discover these insights. And if you want more content that actually changes how you think and live, hit subscribe and ring that notification bell. But most importantly, drop a comment and tell me, which bias hit closest to home? Which one made you think, "Oh no, that's totally me"? I read every comment, and your insights help me create better content for this community. And hey, if you found this valuable, share it with someone who needs to hear this. Sometimes the best thing we can do for someone is help them see their blind spots. Remember, you're not stuck with the brain you have. You can train it to work for you instead of against you. See you in the next video.